Step into the enigma with Paranormal M. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and be prepared to embark on a journey through our latest captivating tales. Brace yourself for the unexpected as we venture into the unknown together. Black figure in the corner. Backstory. I've witnessed weird things in my house before. I have lots of stories, but these two are the ones that I actually saw something. So the first one, I was in grade 1, and my sister was babysitting me while my brother and mom were at work. Our mom told us to clean the house. I was a bad kid and hated listening. So when my sister told me to clean, I was being a brat and I said no. So my sister grabbed me and dragged me to the front of the hallway so I could sweep. But I remember I was laughing while she was dragging me. I was being annoying like that. But when I looked straight into the hallway, a long hallway by the way, I swear to you, I saw a black figure that looked like a man. It was like the side view of a man. Had like a cowboy-looking hat. Just straight up walked into the bathroom. I saw the figure on the closest door. It just walked by like nothing. Obviously, when I saw that, I screamed, started crying, but I didn't tell my sister why. But that freaked me the fuck out. It was the first time I'd ever seen something, and I fully remember that man or thing's walk. The other story, I was a bit older. I was in grade 7, and it was maybe around 8 or 9 p.m., and I was home alone. I was on my sister's laptop, and I decided to listen to music on my iPod. I got up, and I was facing backwards towards the living room. I had my headphones on, but for some reason I had the urge to turn around. So I turned around, and directly across from me was a corner. There was a black figure in this corner, standing kind of weird, with his arms a little out, and it was just there. I was shook. Didn't expect that. So I turned back and looked back again, and it wasn't there anymore. I'm glad to say I never saw black figures again, but I can't guarantee that fact. I've seen things out of the corner of my eye or sometimes a quick glance, but I won't 100% say that those could be a black figure or a ghost, and I'm glad. I don't know what seeing a black figure means, but I never saw it again. My dead grandfather may have come to visit. Help. My grandfather died in 2011 of pancreatic cancer. I honestly don't really know him, and I only have a few memories of him. My family wasn't as close with him when I was born. We honestly never got a lot of time to spend time with each other. But ever since he died, I have had feelings of him, like as if he was with me in certain moments of time. It was kind of like I could feel his presence. It's weird. And I believe he has visited me, 'cause I'm my dad's youngest child, and he never really got to spend a lot of time with me. One night I was sleeping, and I'd woken up on my back with my head a little too much to the left. Kind of like how cats sleep with their heads turned to certain sides. I hope you get it. Anyway, so this position was comfy. I remember lying there, being super lazy to move. I laid there for a few moments, maybe 2 minutes. Then I tried to move and I couldn't. And that's when I realized that I was in sleep paralysis. I hadn't noticed because I was too lazy to move in the first place. Anyhow, when I did realize, I instantly got really scared because sleep paralysis scares the fuck out of me. Then I looked to the right where the wall is, and I saw a figure on the wall, a head. I wasn't scared. I actually felt comforted, but still scared. Like a little bit. I had a feeling that this figure felt familiar, and that's why I wasn't scared. I couldn't pinpoint who this was, though, until I felt my head being touched. Something was rubbing my head in a nice way. It was just touching my head, and I felt so secure and not that scared. And I continued looking at the figure, and it never moved. But when it touched my head, I knew who this familiar vibe could be. My grandfather. For some reason, when my head was being touched, I had the strongest feeling that my grandfather was the one touching my head. It was the least scariest paralysis I had ever been in. I was calm. After I came out of it, the figure left. I didn't feel any presence. I honestly feel like this could have been my grandfather comforting me. Maybe knowing sleep paralysis is something that usually terrifies me. I don't know. My deceased sister apparently spoke to my friend. So I remember I was quite young. This happened in grade 3. My friend and I were at recess, and we were talking when she told me she had received a note. A legit piece of paper on the ground in her room. The writing was claiming that it was my older sister. I can't remember what she said it said, but all I remember is her telling me that it was my sister. I wish I could remember what that note said. But the thing is, neither of my siblings had died. My sister was well alive. So, whatever, I brushed it off. Then the same year, I was eating dinner with my mom and sister when my sister brought up my mom's first child. They died, a baby girl. A baby girl my mom had lost in a miscarriage. I remember being shook as fuck because this was my first time ever hearing about this deceased sibling that I had. But the fact that my friend told me something claimed to being my sister, and I never even knew I had a deceased sister, scared the hell out of me. No, I'm not going to 100% say that my friend was telling me the truth, but I just find it weird that she said sister, and this sister was dead. And I know 100% I've never mentioned to her about this deceased sibling because I didn't even know about it until after she told me she received this note. I don't know what that was, but I find it creepy as fuck. I don't believe this was my sister, though. She was a baby. How is that possible? Do babies grow up in heaven? Like, I don't know, but super weird. Elizabeth and the doorbell. My family lived in an old row home built in the early 1900s. It was truly an odd house. We moved about 13 years ago, and my entire family still talks about the house. We had a ghost. Her name was Elizabeth, found in old records of the house. We never had any bad feelings about her or anything like that, but for the most part, she protected us. My brother had a seizure disorder since birth. My elder sister and brother had the third floor, more so of an attic, and my parents were on the second floor with the nursery where I was. My room was the nursery that was attached to my parents' bedroom. You had to walk through it to get to the stairs to the third floor. It was a weird setup. Elizabeth rang the doorbell, fast and repetitive until my mother got out of bed to check on us. She could walk through my room and I would be awake and sitting up because of the doorbell. I knew she would run up the stairs to check on my brother and sister. It was a very common experience. Every single time my brother was having a seizure, would have been missed during the night. Elizabeth never failed to let my mother know something was wrong in the night. One other time to note, the doorbell was not rung from my brother. The doorbell started ringing particularly loud this night. My mom bolted through my door and made eye contact with me. Went upstairs. My brother was fine. The doorbell was ringing louder and louder. But this time my dad woke up because this ringing is lasting way longer than normal. My sister was spending the night a few blocks away at a friend's house. The only child unchecked was her. The doorbell was still persistently ringing. My mom threw shoes on, headed out the door to check on her. Doorbell still ringing in this. My mom pulls up to the house. My sister is spending the night at, and it's surrounded by police cars. Apparently, the father of her friend came home very drunk and began attacking her mother. I don't know many details about what happened there except that my sister wasn't safe. The doorbell stopped ringing at the exact time that my mother's car showed up when she pulled up at that house, 12:49 a.m. Horrible smell. Background on the house. Old Victorian house, about 115, 120 years old in an old city in Pennsylvania. One death to note in the house that we know of. Natural causes. My whole family and some friends have had some experiences in the house. We're currently working on the nursery for my son who's due in February. Small connection to activity with my pregnancy. This isn't my first. I've had about 5 miscarriages while living in this house. My last one being last December. Naturally, I've experienced a good amount of depression after my losses. But December really messed me up. I noticed that I was abnormally depressed around January. I had felt an increase in activity in the house around that time. Like I was being followed. I could hear footsteps pacing around my bed, banging on the walls, concrete wall at that. My cat literally watching something move around my bedroom. Horrid lucid dreams. Things of that nature. My mom and I started talking about it and figured out that whatever's in our home, which I think it's multiple entities, has latched onto my depression and was feeding off of my own negative energy and becoming stronger. My mom and I blessed the house, something we've done many times before. Crystals, sage, holy water, prayer, Bibles open in every room, windows and doors all open. I stepped into my bedroom and firmly told the entity that I was trying to heal that my sadness was not its own, and that it was not welcome to feed off my energy any longer. That pretty much ended that increase in activity and all was quiet. Back to working on the nursery. We ended up having to tear out half of a wall to fix some wiring that a squirrel had completely chewed up. So our original plan to paint and get that new carpet went far out the window. A few nights ago, my husband and I were woken up by an absolutely horrible smell. Now, my husband is a very heavy sleeper. It takes a lot to wake him. So the fact that the smell woke me up, and by the time I sat up in bed, my husband was also awake, just terrified. The smell was strong, pungent, and just plain smelled like rotting meat. I got up and walked through the rest of the house, and it smelled perfectly fine. We tried to ignore it and went back to sleep. Husband woke me up again about maybe an hour later and said, "It's back." Same smell, only in our bedroom, now slightly in the nursery. We opened a window and put a fan on it to blow it out. I threw some holy water around the room and told it to leave us alone. We went back to sleep. I had the most vivid dream of waking up to the smell and seeing something dark standing in the corner of my room. I walked downstairs to wake my mother up. As my mother and I were walking through the hallway to get back to the third floor stairs, I could hear a woman crying in the living room downstairs. In my dream, I leaned over the railing and called out, "Who's there?" Did this a few times. I got no response except for more crying. My mother had continued to walk down the hall to go up the stairs to the third floor. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, and I was looking up them and called for me. She said, "There's something standing at the top." I walked down the hall to look and woke up when I looked at the top of the stairs. Once I woke up that day and I was alone in the house, I realized that I had not explained to the entities in the house what was happening in the nursery. I sat in my bedroom and politely explained that we had to tear down the wall and fix the wiring so the house didn't burn down. That we were just planning on painting and putting in new carpet. But that was it as far as renovations were concerned, and that I was sorry for not letting them know before we began. We had done massive renovations before, had an increase in activity. We figured out it was best to let them know what was going on and that we weren't changing much in the house. The only confusing part is the rancid smell. I've always associated rancid smells with demonic entities, but throughout that whole debacle, I didn't feel a negative energy like I have before. It felt like an older gentleman who died in the house being upset about renovations. The smell and my dream would say otherwise. Creepy tall figure. My best friend, a 20-year-old female, and I, a 21-year-old female, were just recounting this story. I decided to post it on here. It was just past 3 in the morning, and I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was my best friend calling. She is quite an anxious person. She doesn't like to do things alone. So I picked up, and I had work at 6 the next morning, but I gathered it wouldn't be important. When I picked up, she told me that my boyfriend, male 22, had been trying to call me, but I hadn't woken up. He then called her and asked her if she would be able to pick him up. He was out at a friend's pub having drinks with the boys, but decided that he wanted to go home. Him and his friend, male 21, started walking back. We're in the UK, so the drive is only 10 minutes, but because it's country roads, the walk would be about an hour and a half, especially drunk. She asked me to go with her to collect them, so I reluctantly agreed, but the circumstances. So on the way there, my best friend was talking, but in my head it was muffled, mostly because I was trying not to fall asleep in the car. Her car came to a stop, and I looked up and realized that we were not yet at our destination. I was confused, so I asked, "Why have we stopped?" To which she responded, "I just told you there's kittens in the hedge." This seemed odd to me, but I looked over and saw some little ears. Because it was so late or early in the morning, there were no other cars around, so I also got out to look. When we reached the hedge, there was nothing in there but branches cracking. So we got back into the car, thinking we were just a bit tired and delusional. We carried on driving down the road. Eventually, we reached the boys. They were on a country road about a mile away from the pub at this point. My best friend has a 3-door car, so we both got out to let the boys into the back seats. Once in the car, The boys were breathless. They were confused, but gathered it was just because they'd been walking for probably an hour, given they'd walked a mile. After catching their breath, they told us to drive quick. Sophie, being Sophie, panicked, so she span her car around and floored it. At first, I suspected a farmer with a gun, as we were next to a lot of fields and farmland. What they proceeded to tell us was far more sinister. We asked them what was wrong, to which they both started scrambling to tell us their version of the events. Eventually, they had calmed down, at least a little bit enough to be able to actually explain. They said they'd been walking along and heard something in the bushes. They stopped, trying to figure out if they're being paranoid, if there is actually something happening. Silence. They carried on. Same thing happened, but instead of silence this time, they saw a tall shadow figure, taller than a human could ever stand. They said they froze in fear, but the adrenaline started moving their legs. The figure started to inch closer, so they just ran and didn't look back. We all got home safely without seeing the figure again, but part of me believed that those kittens were like a lure to try and get us to go into the hedges. We would have been the next victims after the boys, and I'm convinced that this thing was probably a skinwalker. We've not had an experience like this since, and I hope we don't again. I feel as if my house is having a bunch of paranormal activity, and I have no idea on what I should do. I've been having these weird moments within my household, and I cannot tell whether or not I should actually dig down and investigate, or if I'm just being terribly paranoid. A few days ago, my father said he'd been getting these dreams with my cat, and he'd been trying to protect my cat. He mentioned a black figure coming at him within his dream. He grabbed them by the throat, trying to protect my cat. I couldn't tell if he was lying or not, like I couldn't tell if the intoxication of the alcohol was speaking for him, or he was actually telling the truth about his dream and the fragments that he remembered. I didn't think much of it till my brother was on a phone yesterday. It was never my intention to eavesdrop, but I just overheard his phone call with his friend. He mentioned something like a bad spirit ruining his energy, so he felt jaded in a way. I kind of have no idea what stuff he'd been talking about. That's what rose somewhat a bit of suspicion within my mind, because my friend always talks about how there's always meanings to dreams, and she's somewhat of an expert on these things. This morning I'd just been in the bathroom. It was 5:30 a.m. or around there. I was brushing my teeth. Suddenly, a jar of detergent that was on top of my toilet for some reason just flung off. It wasn't even near the edge in the slightest. It just flung off, though. I had no idea how. But there was zero force for it to have flung off like that. I have no idea if this makes sense, because I'm not good at explaining it all. Can someone tell me what could be happening? Something kept me inside, and I don't know what. This happened to me when I was around the age of 6 or 7. This was when I used to live in Texas, Houston to be specific, in my old hometown. My parents weren't, very that well in money around that time, and the area around our old home was often known as a dangerous area. Usually people would die near my neighborhood because of often, shooting occurrences. However, unfortunately my house was haunted. The cabinets would fly open by themselves, things would go flying off the counter, and many more other situations that happened inside that house. One day I was just sitting within my room, playing with my toys, minding my own business, till I decided that I could go visit my mom downstairs for something. When I tried to open the door, it wouldn't open, and I noticed that it was locked. Of course, I started to panic and tried to unlock it, but it wouldn't unlock, and I was just starting to get scared because I felt something dangerous was inside the room with me, keeping me inside. I was banging on the door, crying for my mom, when I turned my head around because I felt something watching me. I had a bunch of dolls on a shelf in my room, and all of their heads were turned toward my direction. I started hearing slight whispering from my closet. I was banging on my door more, and my mom heard my scream. She rushed up the stairs immediately, asking if I was okay, and to open the door for her. I was telling her that I couldn't. Something's keeping me in, and that I couldn't get out of the room. She was trying to kick open the door, but unfortunately was unsuccessful. That's when my dad came home from work, and my mom heard him then run down the stairs to get him. She then gave him information on what was happening. As soon as my father heard what was happening from my mom, he ran up the stairs, told me to stand away from the door, and when I stepped away, I heard him banging and trying to pry open the door. It took a few tries, but he finally got the annoying door to open for him. They both rushed inside, asking if I was all right and what happened. I was telling them I was hearing strange noises and sounds coming from the closet inside of my room. Proceeded to point over to where the dolls were, except for the fact that their heads were all turned toward my direction. Afterwards, they made sure to leave the door open at all times and told me to never lock that door again. Strange experience. This was a while ago. I was about 14 or 15 years old, and at the time I lived in a very rural area. It was in Mexico, right off the beach, and I had no neighbors. Our closest neighbor was about 10 minutes walking distance. My house was not very well made. It had 3 poorly made walls around the house, and the 4th wall was more like a third of a wall, and then open air. From the front outside of the house, you can see what was technically a small living room and a sink. Inside that, 1/3 of the wall area had our official small kitchen. Outside of the house, we had a big patio cover, and on one side, near 1/3 of the wall, we had a small adobe fire pit, which we would use to cook nixtamal, which is corn prepped to make tortillas from scratch. Tortillas. Given a bit of background, at that time I was very Christian. I believed in Jesus' second coming. All these details are important. Anyways, it was a calm night. I remember I was outside in the patio helping my mom cook nixtamal. My mom was inside the house in the kitchen area cooking for the next morning. Suddenly, the wind picked up out of nowhere. I was surprised since there was no wind blowing. I turned to look toward the visible area of the inside of my house when I noticed something similar to like a see-through white bag, but shaped like a bed sheet slowly flowing from the kitchen area to the outside of the house. I froze, not knowing what I was seeing. I watched it go all the way out, but once it got out, it shot straight up into the sky. As soon as I lost its visibility, the wind stopped, and I got extremely quiet. The first thing I thought was, oh my God, was that the rapture? Was my mom taken? Was I left behind? So I called out for my mom. Nothing. I called again. Still silent. I ran toward the inside of my house with tears in my eyes, thinking, oh my God, this is it, I'm left behind. I yelled one last time. Then my mom finally answered, yelling back at me, what do you want? Why are you yelling? By then, all sound returned, and it felt normal again. I told her what happened, and she told me that we needed to pray immediately. This stuck with me all these years, never knowing what that was, what happened, and why it happened. I had no logical explanation because I went to check on the white thing that flew out and didn't see anything that could have been either a large white bag or a white sheet. The spirits of victims who commit suicide need answers. 33-year-old female here. I don't know if this is the right place to get answers or help, but I'm gonna try. I have 2 instances where spirits have come to me. I've been dealing with depression for some time now, and of course, with depression comes suicidal thoughts. I take no drugs, I don't drink, so I'm clear-minded and I know this is real. One day I fell asleep after crying for hours, praying to God to help me as I drifted off to sleep in the chair. A random first and last name popped into my head. I don't know why God has wiped my memory because I can't remember the name, but as soon as I woke up, I Googled her name and it said she was 32 and committed suicide. This has freaked me out till this day, still trying to find answers as to why this spirit visited me. I get chills when I think about this. Another incident happened in September. This is where I drifted off to sleep in the bathroom, and I had a vision of Stephen Twitch Boss on September 28th. I only knew Twitch committed suicide, and he worked with Ellen DeGeneres on her show. I knew nothing else about him. Next day I was scrolling on Facebook. I see a post of Ellen wishing him a happy birthday. This freaked me out once again. I Googled his birthday. September 29th. I was shocked. This can't be a coincidence. These spirits visited me and I want to know why. I'm scared, to be honest. Has this happened to anyone here? I'm scared. Advice wanted. Alright, my room has a layout in such a way where when I lay down and look at the end of my bed, I can also see the doorway, which leads into a dark hallway with the ceiling at around 6 or 7 feet. This is important. I was home alone on an average Tuesday night. My family was out shopping while I was staying home. I usually stay downstairs and watch TV to pass the time. But at around 7, my family shops late. It was getting dark, and I was getting bored, so I decided to head upstairs and take a nap. But when I passed by the slightly abandoned room across from mine, I got a weird feeling someone was watching me. I ignored it, thinking it was either my 2 cats or my dog. They like to play in there, and the litter box was in there too. So I went into my room, turned off the light, plopped on my bed, and fell asleep. I didn't have any nightmares or weird dreams, but I did wake up in a cold sweat. I was scared, and that feeling from before was way stronger. I looked at my TV, which was still on. I wasn't surprised because I left it on for a bit of light, but it doesn't cast light into the hallway. I decided to play my 3DS for a bit. Then I heard something. I don't remember the sound, but I looked into the hallway and I froze. There was a tall girl with a hat. The girl was crouched. She had long hair and I couldn't see her face. She had a dress or a kimono and a hat. I wanted to hide under the covers, but she couldn't have moved if I wasn't looking at her. But soon after what felt like an eternity, she went downstairs. I grabbed a baseball bat and ran into the bathroom. which was the only room in the house with a lock, and called my family. They had to do a lot of grocery shopping, so they told me to call 911. I called, the police checked my house. There was no sign of forced entry. My mom put up cameras around the house. This is when my family checked the footage. The only motion caught was me running to the bathroom. I felt scared walking to the bus stop alone after that. I felt that possible ghost or demon's presence following me. I don't know what to do. I finally decided to post this story online. Finally want to / need to tell this story. So a while back in March and April, I was at a motel. It was me, my friend, and his girlfriend. They were on the bed. I was sitting on a chair at a desk, but facing the bed toward my friends. There was a mirror on the desk, a big one, and we had the bathroom door open with the light on. So we had better lighting in the room. You could see the bathroom mirror in the desk mirror where I was sitting, but you couldn't see the desk mirror in the bathroom mirror. If you're looking at the bathroom mirror from the desk mirror, I'm being specific as to allow people to make that scene in their mind. I kept seeing, sometimes blatantly, but mostly out of the corner of my eyes, chaotic yet symmetrically moving wisps in the bathroom mirror. Cloudy things, small, but almost seemed like they were materializing from them. Both looked right at the bathroom mirror and looked at it from the desk mirror. At one point, it looked like a face and was pulsating into existence. Then I saw behind me out of the corner of my eye, and also when I turned around for like 10 seconds, a straight-up Reaper dude, or like a Dementor-looking thing. Like one of those things from Lord of the Rings. I'll never forget it, and it growled at me. As a security guard, I started believing in paranormal stuff. So when I was younger, I didn't really know what to do as a job. Me being naturally a large guy, everyone always joked that I'd make a great security guard. Well, I ended up listening. My job was basically at night going to buildings where the alarm was triggered. Weird stuff happened all the time. But this one really had me creeped out. It was like 12:30 a.m. and my shift had just began. I immediately had to follow up on an alarm in a school. So I went there and first checked the outside. Nothing unusual or weird to see. So safe for me to go inside without calling the police. For those of you who don't know, in an alarm system, you can see certain zones that are triggered. We had them mapped out, so we'd know where to look. Here the alarm went off at the first floor hall. I turned on some lights and walked upstairs. Checked out the alarm sensor and didn't see any dust or something that could have triggered it. My eye spotted a book laying in the middle of the hall. Didn't think too much of it, to be fair. I've seen weirder things than a book. Pick up the book, lay it on a nearby shelf. Just before I reset the alarm and I head back out. The moment I sit back in my car, I hear the noise of an alarm being triggered again. I didn't think anything of it since it's pretty common for sensors to just have, issues. But before I surpassed the sensor, I'd have to go check again. I head upstairs to check the same sensor, and the damn book is laying in the same spot where I first picked it up on the floor. Needless to say, I bolted down, surpassed the alarm system with all risks included, and got the hell out of there. Never told anyone. Years later, I'm talking to a colleague who sounded all panicky at the phone when he started telling the exact same thing happened to him. And believe it or not, at the exact same school. He was terrified. Glad I changed jobs now. Never have to deal with the haunted places anymore. I might actually drop a couple more things on here from what I've seen. I was warned, but I forgot. My work as a security guard. I worked a while in security and always heard my colleagues talk about a haunted school. This was the one school that literally everybody hated to go to because of the creepy stuff happening there. So I started asking questions, but people just answered in short phrases like, "Dude, it's just really fucking haunted in there. And you'll see." So actually, a year goes by and I kind of forgot what school they meant. Around 1 a.m. the fire alarm triggers falsely in the school, which is pretty common. I head over there, turn off the alarm system, and go check the fire system. It was indeed a mechanical error, so usual protocol is where I just call a mechanic. And yeah, we have the night shift emergency kind because fire alarm is kind of high risk. I call dispatch to summon the mechanic, and I sit down in this mega bonker size of a building in the janitor's hall. The one that had all the cameras throughout the school, and this is also where the fire panel was located. I take out my phone and decided to watch a movie while waiting for the guy. So I'm sitting in this little room, but right next to it is the common student room, which is huge. It's a massive open space. It's square, but also kind of goes up multiple floors. Needless to say, it echoes like crazy. I was watching the movie, but my eyes dragged all the time to the cameras, swearing I've seen something change in there all the time when I wasn't looking. I suddenly noticed that on one of the camera screens in the basement, a light is on. Creepy as hell, because in such an old building they surely don't have automatic sensors. So I decided to walk out in the common room and keep an eye on things and listen if I hear something strange. It's absolutely deafening silence. Not even a sound from outside can be heard at this point, which is one of the more odd things considering this school is in the dead center of a city. The moment I walked back to the janitor's room, I hear a sound so loud that I jump up and froze. It sounded like a table thrown through the school. Imagine the echo it left in this crazy-sized hall. Sometimes you can get a jump scare so bad that the veins in your body tighten so fast that it's actually painful. It was that sort of a moment. I listen in, and the second after it becomes quiet for about 10 seconds. I slightly freeze again, but all my body sensors are going off. I'm 100% on, just tense as hell. That's when I start hearing everything around me. Footsteps on upper halls, people talking, doors slamming, tables and chairs scratching the floors. The sounds were definitely inside the building and coming from the higher floors. That's it. Fuck it. Even my body tells me at this point it's time to go. Every physical feeling in my body tells me this is unsafe. I rushed to the alarm system, and the alarm system was next to a little window that showed the janitor's room. I could see the camera screen, and the lights in the basement went bonkers. From turning on and off to going brighter and more dimmed. I don't care at this point about the mechanic who just got called out of bed. I am saving my own ass. It feels like it at this point. I turn on the alarm and drive away. At that moment, the mechanic phones me and says, "Hey bud, listen up. You're probably the new guy, but at night, I don't enter that school. And you shouldn't either. That place is haunted like crazy. Even your colleagues don't want to go there at night." That's when I realized that this was the damn school everyone was always talking about. The mechanic wished me a good shift and told me that he was going to go back to sleep. The rest of the night, I was surely staying closer to my colleagues. Everyone knew I went there, but no one asked questions about me being all shaken up. I got just one comment. "Well, now you know to stay away from there." Fortunately, this was not the last time I had to go there, and not the only thing that I experienced there. The Christmas party ended quick, and something tried to lure me. I had the night shift as security. I was head patrol, meaning that I got all the alarm calls from dispatch and have to divide them amongst me and my colleagues. Now, I'm not going to lie. When you hear the names of the school, the first instinct is to, give it another colleague, but the phone rings, dispatch tells me that the alarm in this particular school is not turned on yet. Some alarm systems have a reminder that it should be turned on after, for example, midnight. It triggers like a little reminder for dispatch on their PC. Now, I'm working the night with a couple of newbies and interns. I worked quite some time there already, so the company trusted me enough to complete stuff with this team. Knowing that newbies would often call for help in the first 2 minutes they would have arrived there, I decided, due to the nature of, just to go by myself. Just to quick hop in, turn on the alarm, and get the hell out of there. I arrive at the building and thank God a sigh of relief when I see the 40 or 50 people dancing upstairs. Some half-drunken people standing below. It's a Christmas party. Knowing that I don't have to enter the building alone completely took my worry away. Also, the reason I've never been caught off guard this much. So without even grabbing the keys, I just rushed through the main entrance, being greeted by the janitor. Now, this guy looked sober as could be. So the first thing he says, "Well, finally, we've been looking for you for like 10 minutes. I get completely puzzled since I literally stepped out of my car and 10 minutes ago I was still near the head office. I asked him about this and he says, "Well, you've been walking around the school like you couldn't find us. Shouted for us 100 times. At this point, a very drunk lady walks up to us and starts cheering that the janitor found me. She shouts at the top of her lungs that they can finally stop looking. Multiple people who were roaming the school appeared and heard someone shout, "Security! Where are you guys?" At this point, I'm well beyond confused. Someone playing a prank on the Christmas party? One of the drunkards? No alarm bells ring yet, so I decided to ask the janitor to take me to the principal off at the school. As he's sort of listed as a contact person, so I needed his permission to take away the timer on the alarm system. I enter a room full of people. And I'll explain one thing about being a security guard entering a party with drunk people. The first thing you get is jokes. So everybody's laughing and making a chat. Now, I wasn't in a hurry considering that I had just begun my shift and no other alarms really got triggered, so I'd joke along when suddenly we all get silenced by a deafening shout that says, "Security!" Now, the scary part is, it was my voice. I recognize my own voice very well since, as a hobby, I play video games and stream them. I have my voice echoing weakly in my ears, and this was me. Thing is, as I was talking there for a minute, some of the people realized it was a voice very similar to mine. The look on their face gave away that it wasn't them playing a joke on me. I've never seen drunk people go sober in under a third of a second until now. Feeling strengthened by having company, I told the janitor to join me. He had all the keys, so that was my excuse for him to walk along. I told him we're going to go check who's doing this. We walk into the hall, and there's where I decided to act like I'm totally fine. I shout at the top of my lungs, "We're on the first floor." While I'm at it, I decided to end with a joking comment saying, "I am the security guard now." Meanwhile, the principal sobered up so quickly he decided to end the party right there and then. He sent everybody home in under 10 minutes. The dude kind of pressured them like crazy. The thing is, drunk people usually stretch to go home. Here they went completely willingly and seemingly nervous. Now keep in mind this school is freaking huge. It echoes through the mid-open sections and reverbs on every single hallway on every floor. So whoever shouted in the first place must have heard me. Yet it stayed silent, which I didn't like, to be honest, because that would make it less likely to be a pranker from the Christmas party. I hear the last people walk out the door, but the janitor is looking for answers. He tells me to check out the school with him. He's afraid that maybe one of the students who caught air about the Christmas party sneaked in and was messing around. We decided to walk up top and go from top to bottom, since I got the time and since I wasn't alone. Backup really gives me a false sense of security. We walked top to bottom since whatever we ran into, we could sweep sort of slowly down toward the entry. A little trick against burglars. Give them an exit, and they'll use it. It's kind of nice for our safety, to be honest. So while we're heading upstairs, we hear above us something dropping on top of the floor. We get tense and stop for a second. I decided to shout, "Hello, anyone up there?" "This is security. We're about to close down the building." It goes dead silent again. So we get to the top of the stairs, and at this point, another sound. This time, one floor below us. This is the point where we are convinced that we are not alone. We decide to exchange phone numbers and sweep both floors at the same time. I mean, this janitor wasn't scared. Guess he didn't know about what was going on in the school. Not totally comfortable with the idea of splitting up in such a huge building, I complied anyway. I take the mid-floor section, he takes the top. When he's done, he would walk downstairs and phone me while waiting near the top entry, so we could both sweep the basement. The stairs to the basement were near the main entrance. While we're both doing our own section of the building, I hear all kinds of noises at this point. Not being silenced by our chatter, it suddenly becomes much more clear to me that we're being idiots and should just get the hell out of there. I hear the guy suddenly shout up to me that he's done with the midsection. Not what we agreed to, but sure, I'll come downstairs. Walk to the entry and he's not waiting there. I peek into the basement and I hear him running down the stairs. At this point, I walk downstairs and I just catch a glimpse of one of the basement doors shutting behind him while I see, kind of through the glass door, and he's walking away from me. I want to speed up while my phone starts ringing. At this point, I get a little jump scare because common, the basement is scary as hell, the non-student part of the school. I answer the phone expecting it to be dispatch or a colleague or something, but nope, it had to be the damn janitor. "Hey, I'm done sweeping the midsection. I'm waiting at the entry now." This is what I hear coming through the phone while I'm standing in the basement looking at someone's back slowly walking through the hallway away from me. Holy crap, I'm being lured by something. I bolted upstairs, told him I sweep the basement already, and let's get the fuck out of here. He must have noticed that I was terrified at this point. I was sweating like crazy and stuttering. I never stuttered before in my life, and I was pushing him to be quick. He asked me if I was okay. I told him just not to make the parties here too late. Seems like he understood because looking at him being pale and not asking any questions further, he quickly took the keys and pushed them up to the alarm system. He had a tag on it which turns the alarm system if you kind of hold it near the sensor. The building's old, the alarm system was quite new. It was replaced after a lot of false triggers. We walked outside the building, and I have shivers running down my spine. We look up back at the building, and on the top floor, it looks like a figure standing in the window. We didn't see it move. We couldn't be totally certain it was a person, but my last comment was, whatever it is, if it moves, it will trigger the alarm, and at that point, it's a problem for the police. Security guard in a haunted school. The police got involved. The reason why I dared, it was summer and a weekend shift. Evening, but still bright outside. Now the evenings and the weekend are much calmer. We had like 10 customers for the whole day, and we needed to do a random checkup, and on the rest we were free for the alarms. 3 colleagues for 10 customers is a lot. But we had some days where it would just be extremely busy. We had a fuck ton of clients. Now we had multiple shift leaders, and one was working this day with me. He was working the main alarm car, the contact for dispatch, and I was his second hand. We're sitting outside the office when he gets a phone call. The third colleague was getting some food, so it was just me and the shift lead. Dispatch gave an alarm at our favorite customer, the damn haunted school. Now there is one more issue with this school, and that is that children who go there often threw bricks through the windows of this school. Yep, the school is in the dead center of a city, but it is really big. On the front side of the school, there's just regular houses. On the back, a small park. On the sides, there's other buildings. I think some companies, from what I remember. The alarm we got multiple detectors, and they all went off in sequence. This usually means that somebody's walking inside. Now, when dispatch sees this, they automatically call the police to join us. I mean, we're not armed, so slightly irresponsible to go without backup in such situations. So the shift lead, a bit of a nut job, gets excited and tells me to join him. Let's go scare some kids. Well, that winds up backfiring. We both take a car and drive to the school. We both park at the front of the building. And when we came there, police were already waiting for us. They had parked their cars at the back of the school in a little park. The reason they waited for us is because we have the keys. The lockdown building was just basically opening the door for them so they could check out what's going on. It's normal that we join them inside for the simple reason that we often are very familiar with the buildings, especially pretty important for bigger ones too. My shift lead proposes, considering the size of the school, that I take a cop and he takes a cop, and we work through the zones and give alarms. Now, the first sensor that went off was an emergency door, which makes it very likely that somebody entered the building. Then it led through some halls, and guess what? Straight into the friggin' basement. Now, I don't know who'd be stupid enough to do that, but sure. The plan we had is that we enter the basement near the emergency door. My colleague and a cop enter the basement near the main entrance. The thing is, the emergency door was still closed. Now that on its own, it's not very strange, I guess. Because if you let go of the door, it'll basically shut itself and lock. That's just how they're built. But the last zone they gave an alarm was in the basement. Basically meaning that somebody's in there where no one's able to go. If the person would have walked back, dispatch would have seen the last zone give alarm to the emergency exit again. So we enter the basement. Me and the cop go down and walk entirely through. We checked every freaking corner. Absolutely empty. The thing is, we never ran into my colleagues and the other cop. So we end up on the other side, back up near the main entrance. At this point, the colleague from the cop asks over the radio where we are. We said we walked entirely through and ended up at the main entrance, basically reverting the question where they are. They were in the basement. They only entered from the same side we did. When we walked downstairs and they started moving to the main entrance via the ground floor level, to also go down the stairs, they turned around and followed us. They explained later that they heard us shout for them to come back. We never shouted anything. So we wait near the main entrance and we hear a loud as hell scream. It was definitely inside the building. Remember when I told my colleague that they were a nut job? Well, that's what I told the cop. I said this was just my colleague being a pranker. The cop couldn't laugh about it, though. But right when I said that, my colleague and the cop came upstairs asking what the hell that scream was. And that scream definitely didn't come from the basement. At this point, the cops freak out and call in for backup. Now, in the Netherlands, when something like this happens, they call in the whole damn circus. We're talking like 8 cops and kind of like a shitload of them. A captain or something it would be in English, I guess. But when they suspect somebody's in a building, they're also bringing a police dog. We're waiting outside on command of the cops till everyone arrived. The dog is here, so everyone who's there is posted into a different section of the school. We're talking everyone. Like at the turning point of the stairs, at the emergency door, at the back door, at the main entrance. I was positioned in the most left stairwell turning point. I was standing like in between floors, so I could see a cop below near the main entrance and a cop above in the hallway near some of the other doors. Felt just fine right there. At this point, we're required to be silent since the policeman with the dog takes the lead from here on. He shouts through the building that there's a dog about to be sent in and you'd better make yourself known and surrender. Well, we got a response. A bang loud enough for everybody to hear it, but no one to specify where it came from. Now I'm standing on the left side and I can see the colleague near the main entrance kind of looking surprised outside. We're standing there for about 5 minutes in dead silence until we get called back. What was going on? The dog refused to enter the building and put up one hell of a fight with its owner not to cross the main entrance. The dog knew. Well, that led to a change of plans. First, listen. If we hear anything, then spread out through the building. Find that person. At this point, my shift lead already came walking close to me, softly mentioned, "They ain't gonna find shit. Not here." 2 cops stand in the big open space, the student common room, just listening. Everyone is dead quiet, but we hear a fuck ton of noise. Cops kept asking their colleagues outside if there really wasn't someone outside messing around. But outside, they didn't hear anything. The thing is, with so many people, you feel a lot more secure, and I was just happy with the school being searched top to bottom. Fun fact, one cop found a hidden room made by students, assuming with help of teachers, who wanted to make an escape room. The cop had to ask for help to get out again. Now, from the outside comes a call over the radio. There's 2 cops at either end of the top floor, but in the middle is a person walking. Both cops rush to the middle only to meet each other, but no one else. Every cop in the building rushes upstairs at this point, only to hear a loud bang downstairs again. At this point, cops are starting to admit that we are pretty much chasing air. Their next idea was to basically turn on the alarm system and wait. If the person would move, the alarm would trigger again, right? Well, it didn't. It stayed completely quiet. The cops basically said we got to do more, or that they had more to do, rather, and that they were headed off. If the alarm triggers, we'll make sure at all times a car is nearby. My colleague, however, wanted to go back inside. Because we're all headed out, the plan to return back in, we just left all inside doors open and unlocked. So here we go, just with 2 of us now. Had a set of keys for my car, and he had too, and, well, we decided to rush and do it as fast as possible. We walk inside, and for 2 seconds, we turned off the alarm and we stand in the entry when another loud as hell scream sounds through the school. My colleague has never been this quick with turning on an alarm system, and now took a big leap getting outside again. Me following in his footsteps. That scream felt like it was right in our face. Felt like it meant it, like you are definitely not welcome here. We left all the in-between doors open, well knowingly that the customer is phoning dispatch tomorrow to complain about that, and we didn't care at all. We spent another 20 minutes in front of the main entrance just trying to listen through the front door. The occasional loud bangs and screams coming through the glass door ended up sending us off. I haven't been here in a long time after that. Remember what I mentioned in an earlier post, that I'm not sending interns here? Well, from that point I did. But it ended up biting me back on the ass. The intern messed up, but I'm back at school. I did a lot of nighttime shifts back because it was good money. I had shift lead once again and was working with 3 newbies. Totally fine, and to be honest, pretty great guys. The night starts off calm until around 2:30 a.m. we start getting more alarm triggers. We split the alarms evenly and worked through them pretty fast. Needless to say, I was impressed by them. They worked max 2 months for us, but worked like experienced people. Now, after they tried so hard, I told them that I would fix one more alarm a bit further away while they could head back to the office. Customers were done, and alarms were mostly done. Then the call comes in. My absolutely favorite school. You know the one. The alarm triggers one single zone. It was close to the entry. Now, I'm at some serious distance while they could, be there in about 10 minutes. I decided to phone one of them and let them figure out who was going to do it. There was one of them with an extra large desire to prove himself all the time. So he reports back to me that he's on his way. In a calm manner, he tells me he's going to fix it and isn't worried about the ghost stories that leak through from the other colleagues. He would phone me once he was done. Half an hour goes by, my phone rings. The first thing he tells me is that he's so sorry, but he messed up big time. We work with instructions about the building. And here it's clearly written, never leave the keys in the janitor's room. If that door closes while the keys are inside, you can't enter again. This is a separate set of keys from the ones that we have in our cars. And guess what? He left the keys inside. It wouldn't be much of a problem except for the fact that the janitor needs these keys in the morning to open certain parts of the school. So here we are. I send an intern and, I have to go back and try to fix it. Now I'm talking with him on the phone, also explaining that I understand he did it by accident, but that it's not the end of the world. He's on the other hand freaking out, and, I was teaching him about the keys, but that really wasn't what was going on. He kept telling me to hurry up because he really didn't like it in there. I pull up and he's standing near the main entrance. I knew why, but didn't bother asking anything myself this time. I remembered from the start of the night shift that he was drinking from a plastic soda bottle. Now, we're in a school, so we have access to scissors. I'll not go into details, but a little trick I learned in security is that a plastic bottle and a scissor work magic for opening doors. I told him we got to look for a pair of scissors. We started wandering around, which is why I ended up here again. We checked some classrooms, when suddenly we notice a window slightly opened. You can't open or enter from the outside, but still something was close. We were considering wind or insects or other stuff from outside. It's kind of a nightmare for alarm systems. While I close the window, the intern is digging through the teacher's desk, ultimately finding a pair of scissors. We head toward the door and that thing slams shut instantly. Our first response feeling backed up because, we're with just the two of us rushing to the door and slamming it wide open, only to startle ourselves again when the door slammed the wall. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, was hearable, seeable, or noticeable on the hallway. The intern, obviously shaken now, fully admits it's time to get out of there. That was my dog. He's got big ears. They flap very loudly. I tell him, and we head back to the entrance and jam open that janitor's door. We're with the two of us, and while I was open, he's on the lookout. I mean, I felt watched from behind there, so it was a logical step to make him have my back. Luckily, this time I managed to open the front door rather quick. Yeah, he's not the first intern to do this, and I bolted inside and the keys are nowhere to be found. I turn around and this dumbass fishes the damn keys out of his pocket. I wanted to kill him. He, on the other hand, is now absolutely terrified. He's 100% convinced that he left the keys on the table and looked through the window before even calling me. He was certain that they were in there. I'm annoyed, but I decide to let it go. While we stand there, he says he heard something. I didn't this time. I was mid-sentence when he stopped me. At this point, the usual eerie feeling creeps up on us there, and we realize it's time to go. A loud screeching sound echoes throughout the school, and we can see on the cameras the lights in the basement turn on, bright as hell. We rush toward the exit while hearing very close by a door slam shut again somewhere. We start rushing like crazy when suddenly we both get the horrible feeling that something is racing toward us. We both hear some freakishly loud and weird grunt. This is where we decided to screw the alarm system. Didn't turn it on, we just rushed outside. For about 10 minutes we tried to gather our courage to head back inside for like 10 seconds just to turn on this damn alarm. But every time we wanted, we heard some loud stuff inside, weird shouts or grunts or bangs, even knocks. We eventually muster up the courage and bolt inside. We turn on the system, and in record time, go back outside. Just before we shut the door, we hear the loudest bang of the night. We made it, and we're done. We stand outside. The intern is done with this. He is swearing and making it clear that he'll never go inside here again. Well, that made the two of us. We were sent off by something. 3 loud knocks seemed to come from above us, and we're outside. We both looked up and see a freakishly tall figure standing top floor. We rushed to the cars, and that was seriously the last time I've been there.